Democracy That Delivers is brought to you by the Center for International Private Enterprise. Now to your host.
Welcome to the Democracy That Delivers podcast and our new series, Association Frontiers, featuring the issues, innovations, and leaders at the forefront of the chamber and association industry from around the world. I'm Stephen Rosenlund, a certified association executive and chair of CIPE's Chambers and Associations Working Group. For 40 years, CIPE has partnered with chambers and associations to find solutions to some of the world's most pressing socioeconomic challenges. We're proud to bring you their stories and experts from the industry globally. Today's episode is occasioned by the tragic earthquakes which struck southern Turkey and northern Syria in February of 2023, causing mass casualties and property damage to a vast swath of territory. To put it in perspective, an area about the size of Germany. For an update on the situation and the business community's response and role in the humanitarian relief and recovery process, I'm joined by Babak Yektefar, CIPE's resident Turkey expert and director of Turkey programs, and Arda Batu, Secretary General and board member of the Turkish Enterprise and Business Confederation, known by its acronym TURKONFED. Babak, Arda, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
First, let me start by saying, Arda, our deepest sympathies go out to the people of Turkey for the immense loss of life, and we certainly stand in solidarity with the Turkish people during this very challenging time. Could you tell our listeners let's start by telling our listeners about TURKONFED. It's one of the leading business associations in the country.
Thank you for this opportunity, Steve and Babak. And just on the solidarity note, a big thank you to CIPE. We felt CIPE very close to us from day one of this catastrophe. And for that matter, all of our national and international partners. But CIPE really stood out in these dark days and really helped us and guide us with its international know-how in adjusting our programs and adapting our programs to this current reality that is quite morbid. And on that note, let me tell you a little bit about how morbid the situation is and a little bit about TURKONFED and why we're active in this area. Now, starting with TURKONFED, as you have noted, we are one of the biggest network of businesses in Turkey. We are a voluntary and non-partisan confederation of businesses that comprises more than 60,000 individual businesses. As we are a confederation, we are comprised of federations and associations underneath the confederation. We have 30 individual federations, and underneath these 30 federations, we have close to 350 individual business associations. And as we are a national confederation, I have to say that we're quite an eclectic group, both in terms of sector, both in terms of region, and in terms of size of businesses. We are representing big businesses through the big business associations that represent the Fortune 500 companies. But I think more importantly, we represent the small and medium-sized enterprises, which most of our programs are geared towards. As you know, big businesses, doesn't matter if it's in the US or Turkey, Europe, Africa, it's the big businesses that have access to finance, that have access to know-how, but it's really the small and medium-sized enterprises that are lacking these accesses. And in that respect, our programs with CIPE is geared more towards SMEs. I realize I've gone on for maybe too long, but just to conclude my initial remarks on TURKONFED, we are a lobbying institution, so we design policy and we lobby for that policy and on those reforms. And we design and we implement capacity building programs that are geared towards small and medium-sized enterprises in a large list of issues ranging from digitalization, access to finance, green transition, gender equality, and so forth. And in my next comments, I'll allude to the earthquake reality and how we have adapted to the reality of the earthquake. But I'll stop here and revert back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's good. It's helpful for our listeners to get an understanding of the organization first before we talk about the amazing work you've done on the earthquake response. I want people to understand TURKONFED, the scope and scale of the organization and the capabilities that you bring. So when you talk about SMEs and representing SMEs, are SMEs the predominant form of business in Turkey? Are most businesses SMEs?
Yes, not only in Turkey. When you look at the global data, small and medium-sized enterprises comprise more than 90% of companies. Same goes for the US. So that's why SMEs are the backbones of all economies, including Turkey. And as I noted in the first part of my comments, yes, we do have a large sum of big enterprises, but really, and globally as well as nationally, the real needs and the real assistance and the real guidance is needed to make. Well, I'll cut that. Jump to my earlier comment. I think you can edit that part out. The real needs is in the area of the SMEs.
And TURKONFED is really a national federation. So you're everywhere. You're present everywhere in Turkey. You have members throughout the country.
Correct. We're a national confederation, and we have representation from all sectors and from all regions and from all sizes of companies.
So when you say all sectors, this is manufacturing, commerce, ag, all the big sectors in Turkey.
Absolutely.
Incredible. You've done I know that you've done a damage assessment and analysis of the economic impact of the earthquake. What did you find?
I'll give you the basic facts. As I said, it's quite morbid, and I'll try to explain and I'll elaborate on how we're trying to adapt to this new reality. But some really striking figures we have calculated in the first week and a half of the catastrophe that there would be an economic loss of about $100 billion. Now, let me open that up a little bit. Now, the earthquake hit a huge area that affects 11 cities in the eastern part of Turkey predominantly. And again, a striking figure that is impacting the economy here is that 20% of the industrialized zones are concentrated in this region in Turkey. We are talking about 11 million people who have been affected, 11 million people. And we are now in the phase of reconstruction, and that requires relocating 1 million people who are lacking housing. So huge figures, unfortunately, huge figures. $100 billion of economic loss. Again, I don't need to elaborate. I think that's a huge loss for any size of economy across the globe.
And this really struck the industrial heartland of Turkey in a sense. And Turkey's known as an industrial powerhouse in the region and globally. This is a big shock to the economy.
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, we do have some absorption capacity, but $100 billion of loss and 20% of the industrialized zone, the supply chain that have been affected, not only concentrated in that region, but as you have underlined, Turkey serves as a hub in this region between the east and the west, between north and south. So it has impacts in a multitude of sectors that are affecting a multitude of businesses from all sizes. When you go to some of these cities, and Hatay, Kahramanmaraş, Adıyaman, these are the three cities that have been hit very, very hard. I can tell you that Hatay, 80% of Hatay is virtually destroyed. And again, this alludes to my earlier comment about how big business, the difference between big business and small business. When you go to Hatay, which has been the city that has been hit the hardest, I could say, when you look at the zone that has been that is concentrated with the medium and big size enterprises, about 80 to 90% of those businesses are intact. But I'm talking about the physical structures. Obviously, there are huge losses in terms of manpower, in terms of running the business, in terms of the commodities and the supplies that need to go into the region. to these zones in terms of running the business. When you go to this area that is concentrated with the micro and small size enterprises, almost 90% of those businesses are structurally destroyed. I'm talking about zero activity. Now, of course, the big businesses are also struggling because, as I said, I mean, there are huge loss of lives in Hatay, where you can't find people to work. Even if you can find people to work, you can't find the raw materials to get your business running. So we're talking about really a redesigning or rebuilding of cities in total, not 10, 20%, but 80%, 90%. I mean, this is really hard to grasp. You really have to be in that region. Even looking at statistics and the numbers and reports doesn't suffice, Steve. You have to be able to see it. I mean, the coverage on CNN International or other media outlets doesn't really give you the whole picture.
Yeah, it's just incredible. It's just incredible. Thank you for helping us and our listeners understand the situation a little better, make it more real, and try to bring it home for us.
Steve, can I just join for just interrupt for 1 second? I also want to mention one issue here. I mean, I had the opportunity to visit Turkey in March. Some of these cities, Steve, I think you and I have both visited a couple of these cities, and I think the one thing that stands out and the way that people still, after a few weeks after the earthquake, felt this shock. I mean, people outside of the region. You're talking about not only about the industrial area and the impact that it has had on the SMEs and so on and so forth, but in many ways, this area is almost like a heart and soul of Turkey. A lot of tradition. This is almost like the backbone of Turkey as we know it from the old days, moving into the new era and a new generation. And that psychological impact for a lot of people, it's still something that weighs heavily and really in many ways impedes recovery. And it's something that at some point, unfortunately, people slowly have to get over. But I do want to mention that psychological impact of that particular region was very visible when we were talking to people in Turkey just about a few weeks ago.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that, Babak. I mean, yeah, as you said, I've been there too in southern Turkey. It's just home of the warmest people, some of the best food anywhere in the world, a beautiful
Hatay in particular.
Landscape. Yeah, especially a place like Hatay and the history, the rich history and culture. And we see some of the damage to UNESCO World Heritage Sites and amazing sources of history and culture for not only for Turkey, but for the world. So Babak, you were in Turkey recently. Tell us a little bit more about what you found. I know you spent some time with Arda and the TURKONFED team and lots of our other partners and organizations. What did you learn?
I did. I mean, first and foremost, really the main reason that I wanted to be there just to be a support. I wanted to make sure that our partners knew that as an organization, SIPE was going to be there as it has been, and even more so. With any kind of help, any kind of resources, however that we can help. That was just for moral and other ways of supporting our valuable partners in Turkey. That was really the main reason for me going there. As I said, I spent a lot of time. Unfortunately, I did not have the opportunity to go and visit the sites that were affected by the earthquake. So I was mostly in Istanbul, talking to partners and other folks that we know there. And as I said, I think it was still early on. It was still we were still at a point where there was a great deal of disbelief and sadness and shock and horror at what has taken place. I mean, this is, we're talking about a region and a country that is obviously has had its experience with this type of disaster in the past. And yet this has been the most devastating of all the earthquakes that Turkey has experienced in the past. Just getting over that, again, as I said, psychological impact of such a grave situation. And then thinking of recovery and the road ahead. And Arda just gave us some numbers with regards to lives lost, businesses lost, livelihoods lost, and what it's going to take. And I mean, just looking ahead at that and that pathway, it's a daunting task. But again, I mean, we're talking about a very resilient country. We're going to talk about resiliency of business, but first and foremost, a resilient country and resilient population. Which I know that they will come back, they will bounce back from this tragedy. But that was the main takeaway, was that people were still in shock. There were a lot of people thinking about how now they can prevent such a disaster in future, and how they're going to recover. And lastly, I do want to tip my hat, as they say, to the work that TURKONFED has done. I mean, this is an organization that was on site first and foremost before anybody else. They had mobilized their 4 or 5 federations that were in the region, business federations, something like 45, 50 associations, main associations that are in the region. They mobilized everyone right off the bat as soon as the news broke. And they were on the scene, working with relief efforts and thinking about how to do recovery. In a matter of days, TURKONFED came out with this pamphlet, essentially, of assessing what has taken place, what type of damage, what are the numbers that we're talking about, what is the road ahead, what kind of type of recommendations is going to help recovery. And this is one of those rare occasions, and we have talked about this so many times in our environment, Steve, where business has taken the lead in trying to tackle a situation that's extremely difficult, challenging, sad and grave. Yet they move forward, and I want to congratulate Arda and his organization on this.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I mean, truly inspiring work, Arda. I mean, tell us. So we talked about the assessment. You very quickly out of the gate came out with a damage assessment, probably before any other or most other organizations. Provided great data on the impact. I'm sure those numbers are still evolving and being updated. But tell us more about the response, the response that you mobilized amongst the membership to provide the humanitarian relief. I'm sure now looking more at sort of a more of a medium term recovery and rebuilding effort as well. Talk to us about what all the work that has gone into this by the association.
Yeah, Babak, thank you for those very kind words, by the way. Yeah, not day one. I mean, minute one, we were ready to go and we mobilized. And this comes out of experience because we've been working in this area since 2018 together with international partners, with UN agencies, with OCHA. We are actually, and I myself, I'm on the board of an initiative called Connecting Business Initiative, which is United Nations and OCHA backed or endorsed initiative based in Geneva that works on resilience and that works on natural disasters and how the private sector can mobilize in the face of natural disasters. And of course, preparedness and resilience is a key component in this area. So our skill set, I have to say, we were ready to go since minute one. And we had worked on the previous earthquakes. These are smaller earthquakes, maybe, that were not really heard from Washington, D.C. or from elsewhere. But we did have earthquakes in Izmir and in Elazığ 2 years before. These are smaller scale earthquakes, but it really built our strength and our skill sets to mobilize stronger efforts for this huge scale earthquake. So minute one, we knew the 3 days that were critical for humanitarian assistance and for general assistance to the region. And we have our own CRM system that we have developed in-house, where we are collecting donations from across Turkey, where we are mobilizing to the region in need. So basically, it's quite a simple CRM where we have our members from the earthquake area demanding for goods and services. It might be generations, it might be tents, it might be foods, beverages, blankets, so forth. So these demands are recorded in this digital platform, and our members from across Turkey are sending direct assistance to the region through our own logistic network. So that's a
Wow.
very simplified explanation of what our immediate efforts entailed. So the first 3 days we knew would be critical. Of course, we worked hand in hand with the public sector. Uh, you have to in such disasters. So hand in hand, we were able to mobilize something in the amount of $11 million of goods and services from our members to the region. So that was number one. Number two, we knew that the economic impact assessment would be critical both for national and international partners and actors in general who would be looking into the damage assessment in the region to adapt their policies and to adapt their assistance to the region. So I'm very proud for my organization. We were really the first organization that came out with the economic impact report that resonated throughout the national and international press. So after this phase, we knew that, again, looking at our international experience and our national experience, we knew that shelter would be the next critical area. So we have built our shelter project to be piloted in Hatay, and then the second pilot will be in Adıyaman, the most critically hit areas. It's basically a shelter project that creates a habitable zone for the inhabitants, not simply sending tents or containers, but a container city wherein there is also social rehabilitation, psychological rehabilitation, rehabilitation center for kids, education center, seminar rooms, and so forth. So not just helping shelter, but also helping the social rehabilitation of the inhabitants of the region. So our first pilots hopefully will be complete in the next few weeks in Hatay and then replicated in Adıyaman. And simultaneous to this, with close partners such as SAIP, what we're trying to do is we're trying to collect data and identify the needs for the private sector and for the recovery phase in the next few weeks and the next few months. And I'm happy to elaborate on our efforts in that area also.
Well, we'll certainly stay tuned for the findings of that. I think that's going to be very fascinating and informative for all of us. As an associations professional, I'm very fascinated by the need for the organization to pivot on a dime, essentially, and go from just sort of, the normal business operations of running this federation to disaster response and how you did that. So take us back to February 5th, if you will, the day before the earthquake. What were TURKONFED's plans and priorities coming into the new year, and some of the main activities you were undertaking, and are you still able to pursue those, or has this fundamentally altered your course for the year?
It fundamentally altered our plans for the upcoming months from February 6th to May. So we halted all operations, all our field work for the next 3 months. We knew that the 3 months would not be hospitable, let's say, for conducting field work for issues other than the earthquake reality. But now we are, I could say, we have recuperated in now adapting and applying our formally made plans, and again slowly we are returning back to our field work in the areas that have not been hit by the earthquake. Whereas for the areas that have been hit by the earthquake, obviously there's a totally new reality. As I said, while we were preparing for, let's say, women entrepreneur seminars for Hatay, while we were planning for entrepreneurship summit for Adıyaman, while we were planning for access to finance workshop in Kahramanmaraş, all of that is off the table. Now we are focusing on shelter. Now we are focusing on the economic recuperation of the area that has been hit by the earthquake. So my short answer is yes and no. There has been, the first 3 months have fundamentally changed, but now we are slowly returning back to our routine in the areas that have not been affected by the earthquake.
But in those affected areas, it's really that focus on basic needs. You're talking about housing and things like this that affect
Yeah, I
people's
mean,
lives.
yeah. I mean, people, as I said, there are about 3 million people who have been displaced. We are in need of 1 million, about 1 million residential areas individually. And a data that is striking over there is Turkey's construction capacity is said to be about 500,000 residences annually. So just 1 million is needed in that area. I'm not talking about the big cities like Istanbul, Ankara. So you do the
Right.
math. I mean, it's going to take some time to reconstruct the shelter areas over there. So the in-between phase until we move on to the phase of constructing permanent residences, we are pushing for container cities that will be there for the next couple of years.
Amazing initiative. Well, I mean, the economy in Turkey has certainly been challenging in recent years, and we all just got through very difficult years of the pandemic. The word resilience is used a lot, and it's not always clear what that means, but it certainly seems to me that this is what resilience looks like when you look at the response and the ability of the association, of the federation, to really respond to the needs of today and the call of this crisis. Babak, thoughts on what other organizations can take away from this experience? I mean, I think there's a lot to learn here.
Well, I mean, you said the word resilience, and not many people know what it means. But then again, to so many people, it could mean so many different things. I think first and foremost, when we look at an organization like TURKONFED, I mean, it was the issue of response within that first few minutes. We talked about TURKONFED was there the first day, and Arda corrected us the first minute. But not only that, it's the issue of going in with a focus and a purpose. Obviously, the most immediate need is going to be addressing the issue of human beings and how they have been impacted, the social aspect of it. But in conjunction with that, parallel to that, it's the idea of livelihood, because we need to be able to focus on recovery, not just by providing tents and social integration and so on and so forth, but ways that this particular region can recover economically and can regain its livelihood. A sort of a private sector focused approach that's more sustainable. Obviously, there's a great deal of aid that tends to pour into situations like that, which immediately is very useful. But the planning of, at some point, we kind of have to wean off of this and have a more sustainable situation where the Turkish SMEs can recover and can slowly again become integrated as part of the global supply chain and so on and so forth. So I think the idea more and more, unfortunately, there are so many natural disasters, there are so many man-made disasters that we're facing and challenges that we're facing. I think more and more business community has to realize, that they need to prepare themselves for every possible situation that could disrupt their function and their activities. But the second thing, and this is something that SIPE to me has been all about, the integration between the business community and the society as a whole, and the importance that the business community and associations and federations such as TURKONFED can play as leaders when it comes to issues that one would not necessarily think of that would be in the realm of business community. And they always look at the government and so on and so forth. Obviously, private and public have to work hand in hand to be able to be effective in any kind of a disaster relief situation. But not many people think of business community as having that role, and yet here we have this perfect example of how that can happen. So I think these two things are really key: preparedness and this understanding of social responsibility of the business community and how they can become leaders in these types of efforts.
Yeah, great points, Babak. I mean, none of this is really in the handbook in terms of for chamber or association professionals in terms of how you respond. I also second your point about preparedness, because I think resilience is also about preparedness. We're any of us are a moment away from the next disaster, whether it's an earthquake or wildfires or a flood or, God forbid, the next pandemic that confronts us all. And I think TURKONFED's work here has really provided an amazing model. Arda, I will turn to you for the last question, put you on the spot, but how can our listeners help? People really are grieved by the situation in Turkey. We mourn with the people of Turkey. What can people do to help?
Before that, just a very short note about preparedness. This comes from international research and data. Every dollar you spend on preparedness saves $6.
Wow.
That's huge.
That's an amazing statistic.
Huge. It's a great number.
That's huge. I mean, so this is the message that we should be getting across to all site partners across the globe, because as you very rightly put it, preparedness also helps resilience. And that actually is a story of TURKONFED, gentlemen. I mean, we were, as I tried to elaborate in the beginning, we prepared TURKONFED for such activities and for such disasters since 2018 through smaller exercises. As I mentioned, the earlier earthquakes and the earlier disasters that took place in Turkey. And that has built the strength of the institution to react quickly and efficiently for this huge catastrophe. That preparedness one. And number two, meritocracy. Again, I think this is also one of the values that SIPE has been promoting across the globe with all of your partners, both in the private sector as well as the public sector. What I saw with my team at TURKONFED is no one is a humanitarian expert. No one's an expert in designing and applying shelter cities. No one's an expert in designing a CRM that helps facilitate the donations going and the assistance going to the region. But if you allow smart people to come to effective positions and influential positions, then those people can really make the difference. And I know that SIPE is operating in parts of the world where perhaps meritocracy is not upheld as much. But I have seen firsthand how smart people and how able people can do big differences once they're empowered and once they're allowed to come to important positions where they can really make a difference. Now, coming to your question, Steve, there are multitude ways of assisting. Shelter, as I said, is a key component. Looking forward, we are looking at a region where 14 million people have been affected, and shelter is a major issue. So I would seek, if I were to be an international donor or an individual who wants to help, I would look at shelter projects that they could maybe help with. Now, there are many other areas: women issues, children issues, education issues, people with disabilities, minorities. I mean, there's a huge list of areas that people can really assist with, and it's an inexhaustive list. I'm sad to say. So these are the areas that maybe international donors or individuals can look into and look at reliable partners like international organizations such as the United Nations or the public offices of Turkey, or institutions like TURKONFED, and all of the information is all over our website for whoever wants to take a look. Just look at reliable partners who are really trying to make a change in the region.
Well, as you say, the needs are so great, and there are plenty of opportunities to contribute, and so we'll be happy to share with our listeners when we post our podcast here. Certainly, the link to your shelter initiative, which I think is incredible, amongst others, so that people can have a sense of where they might put their support to help going forward. And we will certainly be following the work of TURKONFED very closely going forward, as you look at the issues of longer term reconstruction and so forth, and we'll be following your work very closely and learning from you and your great work as a community. So with that, I'll bring our podcast today for a close. Arda Batu, Babak Yektafar, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Listen and subscribe to SIPE's Democracy That Delivers wherever you get your podcasts.